Pardon the Dust. I'm in the process of finishing up costumes for Gen Con this year. We are going as characters from Into the Badlands. I am going as the Widow. So she's the show's only Baroness, and she's awesome. And she's got a pretty cool costume too. So I'll put a photo up of what her costume is going to look like, or what it's supposed to look like. But the purpose of this video really is to explain how I go about putting these costumes together. When you're dressing up as something that's a little bit, you know, not conventional, you're not going to just go to the store and find a pattern for it. So you have to use a process that I call Franken patterning, where we take kind of patterns that sort of look like they'll work. We have to do some modifications and you know, use your creativity a little bit to make it work. So I did a blog tutorial on Anthony's costume. He's going as Sunny. It turned out really nice. I'll probably do a video as well just to show you how it came out. But I thought it'd be nice to kind of walk you through my process as I'm thinking through this sort of more or less in person. So we'll get started and I will explain kind of each step of the way what we're doing. Alright, so I gave you a photo of what the costume is supposed to look like. And it's going to have, she's got this bodice underneath, which I've already made, but I'll kind of show you later. And then over top the coat, the main kind of piece to the costume, is a low cut kind of jacket with tails. And it's got this like ruffly, you know, collar thing, and it's short cut in the front, but it's got tails, you know, in the back. So good luck finding something like that. I actually ended up with, I looked through, a lot of the times you can look through like Halloween costumes and, you know, crew costumes like a like drama club or something like that would use. But I went with this pattern by McCall's. McCall's isn't my favorite pattern making company. I mean, the stuff comes out really nice, but they do tend to be much thinner to cut out, so they're harder to work with. But we'll see how this goes. This pattern here has a couple of different options. So when you get your pattern, they'll usually give you a few variations that you can modify to suit your needs. This one here, pattern B, already has kind of that high waist, and it's got tails. These are very long, so we'll kind of shorten those up a little bit. And then it does have a place for a collar. We're just going to replace that with, you know, something a little more ruffly. We'll probably bring the cut down a little bit more since she'll have the bodice on underneath, and then, you know, just do the finishings and things more like what her costume looks like. So that's it. So we're going to get started. If you look at your, inside your pattern, if you open your book up, you will get, they kind of do this sketch of what your patterns are going to look like. I usually draw all over mine so that you can get an idea for what you're going to have to modify and everything really early on. On here too, you'll also see information about sizing and things. Always make sure you cut bigger than you think you need. You can always cut down. It's much harder to add fabric and modify something to be bigger if it's too tight. The pattern will tell you which pieces you need to cut out. So like I said, they provide you with everything you need in order to make like all of these. So you pick which one you want, and then based on which one you want, you cut out only the pieces that you're going to need. So that's what I'm kind of in the process of doing now. So I'm going to finish that up, and then I'm going to be cutting my fabric afterwards. So I'll break to kind of show you what the fabric is going to look like that I'm using, and we'll go from there. This should be pretty quick. So to give you an example, I've cut out all the pieces that I'm going to need, and I don't really need any of this other stuff. A lot of this is going to be like, this costume comes with like a cloak, and it comes with, like I said, the tails and stuff. But I'm not going to worry about that right now, because all I'm concerned with right now is the bodice. I know I got enough fabric to do everything that this pattern calls for. So I'm just not going to worry about cutting this out right now because I know that's something I can do on my own. So I'm just going to fold these up. You can take your time and fold them up exactly as they came, but I don't really care right now. Just make sure they're flat and they'll fit back in the thing. Okay, so I like to try to clean up as I go. So all these that I don't need, I'm just going to put back in the packet. Like that. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to follow the instructions kind of as much as we can, but if we do need to modify something, then we're going to forgo the instructions. But I like to keep them out just for reference. It gives me some reminders about where things need to go and how things get put together. When you're doing something like a bodice, or I mean pretty much any clothing, it's complicated to think about and to conceptualize because we're not stick people and we're not like two-dimensional, like flat cartoon people. We are multi-dimensional. So a lot of times the shapes that you see, you're kind of looking at these going, all right, like how's this going to turn into a shirt, or like where's this supposed to go? A lot of times your pieces that you're cutting seem like way too big, but don't second guess yourself. Just, you know, do what the pattern says as much as you can until it starts to take the shape of what it is that you're making, and then you can make modifications and alterations as needed. So with that, we're going to get, I'm going to take a break, get the fabric set out and cut so that you can kind of see what we're going to do from there. Alright, so we're going to cut the fabric out. So this is kind of a fun part because it, you know, working with tissue paper isn't so fun. You can't quite see it, but the fabric that I chose for this outfit is it's sort of like a suiting material, so it's the kind of thing that you would use for a blazer or a jacket or something like that. It's kind of a matte finish. I didn't want it to be too silky or sheeny. The one that she has kind of like a filigree pattern, you know, into it, which I couldn't find, so that's all right. I'm just going to use this. But Joann's actually has a pretty good cosplay section. That's where this came from. So they have, you know, the like 4-way stretch spandex and lycra and all kinds of different materials. So if you're into doing this kind of thing, I suggest you check it out. But anyway, all right. So this, one thing to note about your fabric is that for some patterns, some fabrics, it matters the direction of your fabric. So in this case, this is just a very, very tiny herringbone pattern on this black fabric. So I want to make sure that when I'm laying out my pieces, I have all the stripes going up and down the same way. So I don't want like horizontal stripes next to like the, you know, vertical stripes and things like that. So I'm just going to lay this out here and lay my pattern pieces right on top. Another thing to take note of when you're cutting your patterns, to save money and space and everything, your patterns will come like this, but you'll only get like one side. So what you're going to have to do is double over your fabric, so wrong sides together usually is what I do, but it doesn't matter as long as it's doubled over. And sometimes you'll take note on your patterns, it'll say, you know, place this on the fold. Sometimes it'll tell you, you know, to cut more than 2. So this one actually says to cut 4 of this. So this is the bodice front. Having worked with these kinds of patterns before, it's probably because we're going to do one on the inside, one on the outside, one on the inside, one on the outside. So this isn't going to be lined, but it might end up facing. So they want to make sure that it looks good both ways. So I'm going to lay that right there, and we're going to end up cutting 4 of those, like I said. So I'll lay the rest of these out and show you what we're going to do after that. So the first thing that I like to do is to actually mark out my fabric. So some people will pin these. I think I remember in home ec class, my home ec teacher told us to pin these to the thing. I don't have time for that, and I'm pretty good at not messing it up. So I'm going to go ahead and actually mark these down. Since we're using black, I just use a white fabric pen or a paint pen because it just works well. I do little dashes. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, and coming from me, I'm like a perfectionist, but I'm here to tell you that this part, you know, it matters, but just make sure that you're consistent. I mean, you're not like drawing all wonky with your pen. Another thing you'll notice working with these patterns is that sometimes you'll see these little notches on here, and those are very important. So when you see them on the pattern, make sure that you notch out little triangles or little trapezoids or whatever they look like while you're doing it, because those are going to help you once the fabric's cut out to actually line up your fabric with other fabric pieces. So they're there for a reason. Don't ignore them. But I just always like to mention that because they're easy to miss, but very, very important and very helpful in making sure So we'll just go ahead and fold these up. Again, just make sure, like I said, you're taking any notes or anything, you're remembering, that they're important, but I'm good, so I'm just gonna fold these guys up. Keep these separate from the other ones that you folded up, just because you might need them as reference, and you don't wanna go digging for pattern pieces. It's kind of annoying. Right, so you can see now, I kind of have like these like shadows of pieces. So I'm just going to chop all these out. And one thing that you might want to do that I always do is actually label what they are so that I remember what piece they are and where they're supposed to go. So another reason to keep those kind of handy. I've got sleeves, I've got bodice pieces, and that's really all we need to make this. So we're going to refer to the instructions to construct the bodice. Bodices are sometimes constructed different ways. Most of the time you're just going to put the backs together first, and then construct the front, and then do the sleeves and all that. So we'll see how this one wants us to do it. We've got all of our pieces set up here. Alright, so I kind of angled the camera down so you can see what I'm doing kind of here on the floor. As expected, the first step is going to be sewing the back pieces and stuff together. But I'm going to focus on this front part for a second. So if you look at the picture, like kind of my reference picture that I'd shown, you'll see that her jacket comes kind of like more at a curve, and it's going to be held together with almost like parachute clips, as opposed to the one in the pattern that comes kind of like square. So I'm going to ignore the instructions about doing that, and you'll see that on this pattern cutout, this is where we get that square shape. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is actually cutting this around like in more of like a curve to kind of match the curve of this here, but I'm not going to do it yet. I want to wait and kind of see how this comes out first. I'll think about that. But in any case, this I wanted to illustrate kind of what I was talking about, living in a three-dimensional world. So these are the darts that I showed you, the kind of the notches rather, that come out of the patterns. When these go together, we're going to have to stitch them, stitch, kind of like that. But what that's going to do, since it's not flat, we're not living in a two-dimensional world, it's actually going to create like a nice shape. So you'll see how it comes together once I stitch it. But it'll give us that kind of shapely jacket dart that we need in order to make it. So if you're just starting out sewing and you don't really understand that, or you're not using patterns, you might end up with something more flat, which isn't going to work. So I'm going to get this stuff going. I'm going to try to talk not as much and just stop, when necessary. So I'll have little points up on the video as well to kind of direct you when need be. But I'm going to try to fly through this and get this done. We kind of have this pinned, and it's really tight on the seam, but you can definitely see where we have some slack in the rest of the fabric, and that's where we're going to get the shape from the jacket. So I'm just gonna, this isn't really a sewing tutorial, like I guess this is more of kind of an intermediate, you already know how to sew sort of thing, but in case you don't, or in case this is like a refresher for you, I'm just going to be stitching these with a pretty normal stitch at about 1/4 inch. So again, it's easier to make it a little too big than too small. So I'm going to do it at 1/4 inch. We're going to put it on the dress form and see if there's any modifications that need to be made. But for now, we're just going to stitch straight through. All right, so we're doing exactly the same thing with the back sides. See why those notches are important, so we can kind of just line those up, and we know as we're sewing that everything is as it should be. This is very straight, so I'm not even gonna... Let's go to the dress form. Okay, so this part's kind of exciting. We get to see that this thing's actually turning into something that looks like clothing and not just shapes. But you'll see here on the front of the bodice how that curve that we did really made like a nice dart right there. That's going to fit really, really well. I like to pin stuff to my lady. You can stick the pins right in, so it makes just, you know, just for a nice way to see what you're coming up with here. She is going to have the, like I said, the other bodice that I made is going to go underneath of this. So even though she's pretty much like my size, sometimes the chest, you know, measurement doesn't really work out and stuff. So I do like to put the stuff on if, you know, if I'm making it for myself. But if you're making stuff for somebody else or, you know, whatever, it's a nice kind of way to be able to see what you're working with. But plus this way I don't stick myself with pins, so. Okay, so I'm just gonna put that there so we have an idea. So you'll see we have a lot of room on the waist. And that's why I always wait to do the sides too, because usually the front and the back is okay. At any of these junctures you can take it in. So that makes it pretty easy. But our sleeves are going to go on here once they're done. I'm not going to be lining this jacket. If it was a jacket that you were actually going to wear, I would definitely recommend lining it, but it's summer and it's hot and this isn't something I'm going to be wearing all the time, just kind of for Saturday, so I'm not going to worry too much about having it lined. Anthony's was lined, but his is, the material is a little more scratchy on the inside, so I'll flip her around so you can see the back. So you can see that that creates a really nice taper in the back, so that should be good. Once I do come to like a finalization on these here, I will stitch these closed, so it'll be really nice and flat, as opposed to, they kind of like look a little bubbly right now. So next I'm going to get the shoulders done, and then I might slip this on myself and just see if, you know, any other alterations need to be made. Again, I know that this is going to have to change. Hers really kind of comes in actually more along the lines of that. So as I'm working, you know, the pattern a little bit, I'm doing what the pattern is kind of telling me to do, but in the back of my mind I know that this is probably going to come in, you know, somewhere like that, something, or whatever. So that's that.